Good morning, and welcome again to our Wednesday studies as we gather by the camera once again. I hope I'm standing a little bit further away. Somebody told me the other day that when they turned the camera on or when they turned on the YouTube, it looked like I was standing right in their face. So I probably was. So I apologize for that, but still new to all of this stuff, so there it is. As we continue to but look at the different aspects of the characteristics of God. Maybe we should worry because we don't know as much as we should. But the one we want to consider this morning is a good God, the goodness of God Himself. One of the attributes I think is the strongest is His goodness, because that's what everything else kind of relies upon, and how we fight the fight, how we live on earth, and how we look to our eternal reward, only because of the goodness that He has displayed in everything that He has done for mankind as a whole. Lewis Smedes is an author of a book called A Pretty Good Person. And I challenge you this morning, think about, what do you think makes a good person? What are the attributes of someone that you might consider as a friend or someone as an acquaintance that you would consider a good person? What old Lewis says is that a good person usually has a real good sense of gratitude. He has a little bit of grit. He can take care of himself, but he knows how to do things and gets things accomplished, and is not shy from helping others to attain or to get over a stumbling block that they have themselves. And they are filled with basic integrity. They do a great job on right from wrong and all of the things that go into living as they should. A good person always has an eye for what's going on around them. So he knows when he needs to reach out and help someone, or to offer assistance, or to lead the pack, as it were, in going the right direction, or in following the right attitude or the right way to go, period. To not lead the group in the wrong direction is what I'm trying to say. And he also has a willingness to love fairly. He is evenly tempered. He does not look left or right, black or white, green and red, or whatever the case may be. He is a solid person. And for good reason, we could call that individual a good person, a fairly good person. To be totally good is impossible. Totally good is God. We can never match that, of course, and we don't even pretend to. So we as human beings, us Christians here on earth, strive to do the best we can with what we have. I suppose stopping at better than average would be where we could say most Christians should be. Better than someone who has little faith in the future, or better than someone who does not know God at all, or just cuts God out of his life. I suppose we can always remember when we say God is love, but also Nahum, which we really study a lot, right? In the first chapter of Nahum, it says, the Lord is good. So it's kind of like a grammatical statement saying this is exactly what God is. It's this person. If He is love, He is also good. And so we can equate that and understand a little bit more about what we're trying to say here. This goodness feature, this goodness characteristic is never absent from God, because the Bible tells us that the goodness of God is present forever. The goodness of the world is present in God forever, never changing, never diminishing, always the same whenever we look. I think one of the goodness parts of God is shown in His generosity to us as human beings. Lloyd Ogilvie is an old preacher. You may remember his name because he was the pastor of the Senate at one time, the chaplain of the United States Senate. But a fellow said he was listening to him one day, and all of a sudden, he was talking about the prodigal son. And all of a sudden, in that study of Luke 15, he just stopped everybody. And he says, I've given you the wrong title for my sermon today. And so everybody looks around like, he's halfway through. What are we going to do here? And he says, I'm going to talk about the prodigal father for the rest of this sermon. He said the prodigal father is more true to the real meaning of prodigal than is the prodigal son. And so I said, what in the world was he talking about? What does prodigal really mean? Prodigal really means lavish. It means unrestrained, uninhibited. It means almost wasteful to a point. Well, certainly we could say the prodigal son was all of that because he took that inheritance prematurely and he went out and he did everything lavishly and spent every last dime he had. And then when things got so bad that he couldn't even fathom how he was alive and living when he could have had it so much better back home, that he decided it was time to leave and go back. But what Ogilvy says is, here is the father who's standing at the head of the road, waiting for that son to come back. He does everything lavishly in return. The ring, the robe, calling the servants, having the great feast there for the kid. The father was truly unrestrained and uninhibited in his gladness, in his reaction to his son coming home once again. And we can say that father was generous to a fault. He was so happy that that son had returned. So he was truly, by definition, a prodigal father as well. Loved so generously that it's almost unmatched. God's love for us and the way he treats us is totally unrestrained like that. And we see that in the provisions he's laid out before us and the things that he does for us. Psalm 145 has a classic passage on the goodness of God as seen in the way he provides for us in our needs. Hear this in verse 6 and 7. Men shall speak of the might of your awesome acts, and I will declare your greatness. They shall utter the memory of your goodness, your great goodness, and shall sing of your righteousness. Then it goes on to say, the Lord upholds all who fall, and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look expectantly to you, O Lord, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand and provide, and satisfy the desire of every living thing. Provide? Psalm 136 tells us that God gives food to all flesh, for his mercy endures forever. And then Psalm 33 says, and we all know this one, the earth is full of the goodness of the Lord. How has he exercised his provision for all of the earth? When you think about it for a minute, and I think about, first of all, the manna that he gave to those folks there when they were in the wilderness for 40 years. And you can understand how they had to get pretty fed up with bland, tasteless food. How could we survive on something like that? And then I think about strawberry fields, a tree loaded with apples, a field of tomato plants with those red ripe tomatoes growing right there in front of us. Think about all the variety, all of the goodness, when all he had to do was just give us the manna with no taste, no variety, no nothing. But in his forethought, he provided something more than just the basics. Think about it in the creation itself. Why couldn't he just made the land all one particular type of terrain, one particular type of vegetation or whatever? That would have been pretty boring too after a while, wouldn't it? And so therefore he created all of the mountains and the hills and the valleys and the rivers, all of the beautiful plush forests. There was not a whole lot that was exactly alike. So he gave us, again, a variety so that we could understand how good he was, how forward-thinking he was to provide something that was so open and so inviting to each and every one of us. I think about the time when I travel for the first time. Maybe it's just a tiny infant or a kid in the back seat of a car. Because all I'd ever seen was, just the terrain around the house and the woods in the back and the church on the left side. And I was amazed at how different the world was driving down to Myrtle Beach. I'd never seen fields of corn like were on display or fields of tobacco on the other side of the road. And it was just amazing to me as a kid that there were things I'd never seen before. I really didn't even have to travel too far from home just to see the things which intrigued me. That my world was getting bigger and bigger every day as I learned to live. One of the other attributes I think of God's goodness is his patience with us. Probably more than any other thing in the Bible, God's patience is written about. And Psalms, again, is one of those things that talks about the patience of God in terms of his mercy. Mercy and grace. How sometimes we forget what those really mean, but think about mercy. Mercy in terms of what God is saying to us is he is providing something that we really don't deserve. May I change that a little bit? Grace is getting something we don't deserve. Grace is the gift. And mercy is not getting something which we do deserve. Now, we talked about humankind being good, or how you would recognize a goodness in a person. But think about that. That's God's grace. He's giving us things which are good for us. He's giving us salvation. He's giving us hope, faith, eternal life. But mercy would be really taking care of things that we should be punished for, things that we really are out in left field on, and therefore mercy is not getting something we should be getting. The pain and the aggravation, the downside of sin, the degradation that it brings to our lives. But God's grace overcomes all of that. And he sees that firsthand and is offering that as part of his provision in his goodness to give us just that. Thank goodness he doesn't give us what we deserve. Then I'm concerned sometimes about when I hear Christians talk about getting what is rightfully theirs. We've all heard that. Maybe we've uttered it ourselves. Well, I just don't understand. That just should be something that's rightfully mine. I've earned that. But if we prayed to God and asked for that kind of thing, and God did give us what was rightfully ours, we would be dead. We would be hell-bound because we've done so much that he's kind of forgiven us for, hasn't he? Absolutely. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men, for he satisfies the longing soul and fills the hungry soul with goodness. He repeats that about 3 or 4 times in Psalms again, in Psalm 107, verses 15, 21, and 31. Over and over, he's repeating and trying to pursue that, getting it into our mind's eye as to exactly what it would be like, what we should be like itself. Think about the Garden of Eden. We wouldn't have had the patience to put up with what God did. We would have cast out, we would have gotten angry, we would have thrown people out probably. But that's not the case, and we know that from our Bible. But God forgave generously. He didn't take away humor. He didn't take away good times. He didn't take away happy times. But he gave everything and left it in place for the good of human beings. Our joys and our freedoms he could have taken away very easily there at the Garden of Eden, but he didn't. And so we still experience great blessings, great provisions from the hand of God. And we certainly cannot complain about the way he treats us as human beings. Some people wonder why God blesses everyone and not everyone gets the same treatment. Because the good and the bad alike seem to be getting the gifts of God one way or another. We think about that when we try to keep up with the Joneses or whatever, and they're not nearly as quote-unquote good as we are, or as Christian as we are. But I think he samples out his goodness. Some goodness he gives to all people. But all of his goodness he gives to some people. And there's a major difference, isn't it? while none of the people deserve any of his goodness, he dispenses it in his wisdom and in his justice. You can live an angry life because God didn't think you, or you don't think God was giving you everything you needed. But God is a really good God, and we have to thank him for what he has done for us. And the last part of this is the patience of God. The goodness of God always leads us to think about the protection that he provides for us. A lot of times I think about a guardian angel, as it were. You know, how many times have each and every one of us gone through an experience or gone through a red light or whatever it might be, and realized when we got to the other side that we could have been a real victim of whatever was happening there. But it's like that guardian angel is sitting on our shoulder and protecting us from something that could have happened to us, but it didn't. His goodness is protecting us. He's looking out for us. He knows when someone falls. Personal experience here. A day or two ago, when I was a senior in high school, just before homecoming football game, the football team had to walk through, and so we were heading out, and there was a huge water tower going up just down the road there on the bypass, and the fence was not there. There was nothing there. They still had the ladder all the way to the ground to get up to that first level where the ladder is attached to the leg of the tank. And so 3 of us decided that we were going to climb to the top and paint a celebratory sign on that tank. And I distinctly remember climbing up that ladder. There were 3 of us to start with because no one else was fool enough to try it. But 3 of us decided we were going to do it. So 3 started. Then I looked back and the 3rd guy had gone back down. We got halfway up and the quarterback on the team decided he was going back down too. Well, for some reason, I was the one that was starting up that ladder. I mean, I would have never, come up with that idea myself or anything. But I decided I was going to go into the top just to prove that it could be done. And I climbed all the way to the top. And every time I went up a rung on that ladder, I think my hands got sweatier and sweatier. But I made it to that catwalk at the top of that, or at the base of that water tower. And a can of spray paint in my back pocket, I pulled out and put "Go Wildcats" in big letters, and then climbed back down. And I remember my best friend said to me as I put my foot down on the ground, he said, "You're an idiot. You know that. But your guardian angel sure did look out for you." And I've remembered that ever since. Of course, I've never climbed another water tower, and 20 feet is my max on a ladder of any kind or a height of any kind, and it may be even lower than that now that I'm a day or two out of building business and long since retired. But those are the things that we look for. Those are the things that we feel and cannot put a name to, but that's what it's all about. We are God's children. God's provision, his patience, his protection are all evidences of the greatness of God. The things we take for granted, the things we don't look into deeply enough to know that we truly are taken care of. But God's goodness is manifested in his love for each and every one of us believers. And I urge you this week to take a real sampling, take a deep look at your life, and see what goodness you may have taken for granted, or how guardian angels, as it were, the grace of God has protected you from something that you didn't even think about. Look at the goodness of God in your life and all the blessings that have come your way, because he is there looking out for you and for me. To God be the glory. Amen.